Awesome. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Valuable Mind podcast. My name is Brandon Pony. Extremely excited to have our guest on this morning. The Valuable Mind podcast is made for business owners, real world business owners that are in the trenches right now. They didn't just build it once or did it in the past years ago. They're actively right now running their business in the staffing and recruiting space. And our guest this morning and this afternoon is actually very, very unique. Very excited to have Graham Locklear with us. Graham, excited to have you, man.
What's up, dude? Let's do it.
I'm super pumped. So Graham is the CEO of M Search that has been around for over 6 years, but he's been in the space for many, many more years beyond that with several different companies. But I want to let him obviously tell his story. Let's start there, Graham, with your background.
The background, a tad non-traditional, I would say. I came to search, I guess it's been a little bit over a decade now. My whole family had been involved in, my mother owned a recruitment firm when I was in high school. So like during the summers at my first fake job or whatever, I would go like make calls for her and my father was involved and my sister got involved at some point at some firm, right? And they all had been pitching me on getting into search. I had a point in my young career where sort of was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And eventually I sort of tapped and I was like, okay, fine, I'll try it, right? I think, one of the things that was unique about me is a lot of people fall into this business because they don't know what else to do. And I think that lined up with me to a degree. But once I decided I wanted to do it, I kind of already knew like I wanted to start a firm, right? Like I wanted to go and really figure this out. Like I've got some pretty lofty aspirations. I'm always going for the championship type guy, right? So I think I started at a small agency, sort of cut my teeth there, really old school, great little firm, and run by this amazing woman called Carol O'Neill, and she kind of did it old school, right? Just sat in a desk next to her, sit next to me. Here's your phone, here's your computer. Just listen to what I do, figure it out, right? So spent the first 6 months figuring out if I could be good at it. And it
Mhm.
turns out, yeah, I could be good at it, right? So that's good. Stayed with her, I think, for a total of like somewhere around 3 years or whatever. And was kind of thinking about starting my own thing at that point. And I was like, you know what, it's a small firm. Let me see if I can go to one other firm and just see if they're doing anything differently. So I went over there, a little bit of a larger firm. Turns out they were doing it the same exact way. So I was like, all right, I think I'm good. My fiance at the time, we lived in like, of course I got like the nicest apartment on the Hudson River so I could get the fiance. And then, started sharing with her about like my
Marketing.
dreams and everything. Yeah, marketing.
Marketing.
That's it, dude. That's it. But like she's like my rock, man. I share everything with her. So she had always known like what the plan was, right? And I think after I moved to that second agency, we started talking, we got engaged, so we knew marriage around the corner, which probably means babies around the next corner. So basically, she was like, all right, if we're gonna do this, let's do it. Right. So kudos to her. She kind of gave me the initial shove. Of course, we moved out of the really nice apartment into a three-story walk up with some little furry friends that used to come visit us every day. So we just kind of like leaned down in terms of expenses and I started my business, man. And, it's been a wild ride. Ups, downs, sideways, all the above. Sometimes it feels like you're going in circles, but fast
Yeah.
forward 6, 7 years, whatever it's been, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's provided me and my family an exceptional life, and I've gotten an opportunity to learn a ton of professional development, and really work with some incredible people and do some pretty amazing stuff. So it's been great.
It's so cool. It's amazing to hear. It's inspiring too, and you made the leap and you didn't really know where you're going to end up. And
No, no idea. I had some ideas actually, but they were the wrong ones. But yeah, I mean, it's worked out thus far and it's a constant journey. Every single day you wake up, it's like going to the gym, like you don't go to the gym for like a destination. And it's just like, it's a journey, man. So we're on that
oh
journey
yeah.
every day.
my one of my favorite quotes. I can't remember who said it, but it was like daily routine takes you straight to your dream
Ooh, I like that. It rhymes. It's catchy too. Somebody
all the
needs to
time.
coin that thing or I'll take it.
Somebody, yeah, I forget who it was, but maybe I said it. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. We'll just say it was you. No,
Yeah,
that's good. I like that.
daily routine. That's it. Well, and obviously there's so many stories there, like as you were saying, ups and downs and in circles sometimes. There's so much to be said and unpack there. But before we kind of dive more deeper in there, tell us more about what M Search is doing. Like, tell us what.
Good question, right? So, um, look, when I started it, we were just sort of run-of-the-mill tech sales and marketing recruiter,
Mm,
right? And I think we did good work. I know we did good work because it was really just me and my sweatpants in my one bedroom, three-story walk up, right? But we would win some, we would lose some. And there was just really no leverage there. And I was just like, what's going on? What am I doing wrong here? So I started kind of really think about it from a strategic standpoint. And we started looking around our portfolio, and what we landed on was we're not solving problems that are difficult enough, right? Because there's too many other people solving the same problems. It's commodity, not a way you want to build a business.
mm,
So I started to talk to my customers and try to identify that more sort of second tier difficult customer problem to solve. And one of the things I found was companies that are selling a more technically complex solution have a particularly difficult time hiring go-to-market people, sales, marketing, biz dev, partnerships, customer success, all, sort of front-facing people, which is counterintuitive maybe, but if you think about it, a lot of these technical concepts really have their own language, right? It's a separate language. The barrier of entry is greater, right? And if you don't speak that language, you're gonna have a really tough time selling stuff, right? Like imagine you're trying to sell a car as you, Brandon, but you're in Tokyo or some other place where they don't speak English. It's gonna be pretty tough to do that, right? So it's
mm.
it's kind of akin to that. So we saw this problem, and we figured out it was a common problem for these company types. So we just kind of tripled down there and figured out ways to solve those issues at scale. So that's what we do today. We do a lot of work with companies in AI, ML, cloud infrastructure, dev tools, companies that are selling technically complex solutions to very technical audiences, right? And we help them find those customer facing people that can speak those languages.
Solid. Love it. And done it very successfully now for obviously you built your bearings, you built your foundation well past that stage, thankfully. And now 6 years running, 6 years plus. It's very, very cool. Speaking of, so we're diving in, I definitely had some questions around trends. So in your career, your emphasis on data-driven
Hmm.
process for talent
Hmm.
searches. So can you specifically share like a specific approach, or is it
Yeah.
more a tool that you're using to ensure that you're finding the right leaders?
Yeah, look, I think the tools thing is kind of a trick question because there's like a million ways to skin a cat, and like
Mhm.
there's always new tools you can buy, and none of them work exactly how you want them to, right? Like, so a lot of what we do is at least starts in a spreadsheet, but I think it's what numbers you're looking at throughout. How do you take the art form of recruiting and science it out as much as possible? So we call it like, recruiting Moneyball, right? So I'll give you a good example of that, right? Most recruiters, most executive search firms, they'll just kind of like run a search and it's like this week we got this many people, this week we got this many people, and just start kind of dripping into the client. That's a problem as far as I'm concerned for a number of reasons, but
Mm.
the first reason has to do a lot with like the analytics around delivery, right? So we collect and we look at all different types of data when it comes to our search process, right? It starts with how many people are we identifying as potential candidates for a role? right? Then it goes, how many people are engaging with us? How many people can we get to engage with us in some way, shape, or form? Even if they respond and said, I hate recruiters or whatever. And we've got plenty of those like really interesting responses. Not too many, but there are definitely some interesting ones. So then we look at how many people respond to us. Then we look at how many people respond with an initial indication of interest, an IOI, right? Then how many of those people convert to booking a screen? How many of those booked screens show? How many of those screens turn into submittals that we're presenting to the client? And then how many of those submittals turn into first time interviews and those first time interviews to placements, right? So those are like top line funnel metrics that we track through every search that we can do. And because we do that, every time we take on a new search, we can gauge the health of that search at the front end of that pipeline, right? Because we can look at those conversion ratios and have some good predictors of, hey, this is what's going to come out the other end of this funnel if we don't change anything. And you either like the way that looks or you don't like the way that looks. All the while, we're sharing that information with Mr. or Mrs. Client and saying, hey, here's how you should set your expectations. What do you think? Do you want to keep going this way? Do you want to pivot? And just like communicating with the client in real time to give them that visibility, right? I think that's a big area where a lot of recruiters fall short, right? They're not communicating strongly enough with the client. They're too scared to maybe say, hey, we didn't get anybody this week, or, nobody was good that we talked to, or we didn't really find that many profiles to begin with, or our messaging sucks, or whatever it is. You know, a lot of that stuff needs to be pushed to the side. You need to be able to have those conversations with the client because that's what real partnership's like. So we share this with the client, we work through it together, and we do it in a way that's not going to take 40 hours a week from the client because they got full-time jobs. And this is what we're hired to do. But
Hmm.
involving them in that process with these high-level statistics to try to get them some forecasting on what to expect is just one example of how we can take a data-driven approach and just deliver a better product to our clients.
Amazing. And it definitely sets you apart, and that you can hear it, the difference specifically what sets Search apart. One of my favorite books is The Crucial Conversations.
Mm,
It's that specifically exactly what you're saying is the premise of the book, where you can tell the health of any organization or any relationship by what's called lag time, the time that the problem arises to the time that it's actually talked about or brought up. So if
mm.
it's, an issue happens, an issue comes up, and that talk, that conversation is within one day. You have a very healthy, that lag time's so small, very healthy relationship. If it's 6 months, there's no communication.
It's a problem.
That's huge. They're just hoping that you just don't really realize what's going on. We're not going to talk about it. We're going to try to fix it first. And that goes in any relationship, and that's amazing. So it definitely speaks volumes of how you're running your business.
Yeah, I think that's like also just from a professional development standpoint, like I think, you know, I would be willing to bet like 75% of the time, what you want is just on the other side of a few, scary conversations, right? And every time you have those difficult conversations, you build up a little bit more, I don't know, scar tissue or muscle memory, whatever you want to call it, and you start to get more and more comfortable in these new rooms, right, that you walk into, right? So over time, it becomes second nature. And one of the things that's interesting about running a business and just like, you know, being on the road to developing yourself is, you end up like really wanting to find those new conversations that like kind of get your heart rate up a little bit. Like those are the fun things, you spend too much time in one stage before leveling up, you start to get bored, right? It's when you go into that next level and you can like whether it's a bigger deal or a tougher customer call or whatever it is, but like everybody knows those conversations that like kind of get the heart rate going. And what I've found is that if you can optimize for that, like your professional development is going to skyrocket and your fulfillment in your work is going to skyrocket as well. So what did you say it was called, the crucial conversation?
Crucial Conversations.
I'm gonna check that out for sure.
Yeah,
That's on.
it's red and white logo. Not a long read. It's incredible,
Nice.
incredible
Nice.
book.
I'll
Yeah.
check it out.
So I'm so with you. That's the growth. It's the
Hmm.
growth. Behind that, getting out of the comfort zone, the conversations, usually we're one relationship away, you're one phone call away, you know, one conversation away from something that could totally change someone's either in the event of recruiting, life, their whole livelihood, or your business.
Yeah, that's another part I think a lot of recruiters are just missing, the forest through the trees or whatever, right? Every time you're reaching out to somebody about a new job, it's not just you're going through your list that day. Like you're talking to these people about making one of the maybe three or four biggest life decisions that they can make, right? So like let's handle that with some professionalism. I think we just all need to raise the bar because it's a big deal. Same thing on the company side, especially in like my case. I'm working with a lot of these founders. If they blow a VP hire in sales or marketing, they could potentially be starting back from ground zero after 9 months, 12 months, whatever it is. That means, walking back promises to investors. That means potentially not being able to secure another round of funding. That means potentially having to cut some of the people that you hired, right? Or not delivering for customers. Those are all like critically bad scenarios that you want to avoid, right? So, um, look, we're not saving lives, but we're definitely changing lives. Put it that way.
Right. That's true. Exactly. Close, right? Okay, it's debatable, right? And I definitely, well, on that was going to be my next question is, so like the challenges in search, in your experience, what's like the biggest mistake companies are making trying to attract or trying to retain, top talent?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there's so many mistakes. There's so many mistakes, but I'll tell you one that just kind of pops top of mind and I think is a big one that I see a lot and it's super important. I think I was just writing about this today. I think if you put the customer first in everything you do, you're going to have a high likelihood of building a really great business, right? And I think sometimes founders, CEOs, executives, investors forget that philosophy when it comes to hiring executives. I don't know why, right? But you need to be putting your end customer um, as your North Star when you're getting ready to scope a search, right? Too many times you see founders go out there and chase, you know, the candidates with the big logos or with the right connections or,
Hmm.
whatever it is, right? Like there's just a clear gap in their understanding of what they need to be going for. I think they fall under the spell of a lot of this pedigree and logo stuff, which look, that stuff has a place, right? It's usually on the investor deck, but when it comes to actually plugging an operator into your business, what you need to do is optimize for buyer empathy, right? You need to know that the person that you're hiring into this role, okay, has a deep and intimate understanding with your customer. Okay. What are their pain points? What are their goals and aspirations? How do they get evaluated at work? What is the next milestones for them? What their language is, if you don't know that, it's going to take you way too long to ramp up and your marketing is going to fall flat. Your sales approach, your prospecting, your go-to-market motion, that's not going to be optimized to how your buyer needs to be engaged, right? And you're going to struggle. So I just think that a lot of executives, CEOs, founders, whatever you want to call it, fall into this spell of optimizing for the wrong things when they should just really be focused on their customer, especially when they're hiring execs. So that's probably just like the first thing that comes to mind because I was just writing about it today.
Perfect. It's relevant. Love it. I love it. More to write about now.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, you're giving me a lot to think about here, Brandon. You keep me on my toes.
This is great. I love it. What were some, because we can go real deep. What were some of like the lessons that you kind of learned when you were building M Search?
Oh
I
my
know there's
gosh.
quite a bit.
I don't know if we got the time,
Right,
dude.
right.
I'm still learning them. Um, I think, we all kind of have these visions, at least for me, like I'm a visual thinker or whatever. I know there's people that just like are more narrative, in their own internal speak or whatever. But I think when you set out on a goal or a mission, even if it's you're hiring or if you're starting a business or finding a new girlfriend or whatever it is, right? Like we have these like loose visions in our head about where we want things to go. And I think part of the work that we do is to kind of start to crystallize those visions, right? But I think another part of it that, I didn't necessarily prepare myself for is once you crystallize that vision, you need to be able to shatter it at the drop of a dime, right? Like you need to be able to shift because, you don't know what you don't know in a lot of cases, right? When I started this business, I was so infinitely dumb compared to where I am today. And I'm sure I'll look back in 10 years and think the same exact thing, right? So for me to sit here and say, hey, I'm going to map out my entire thing here and figure out what the next 10 years looks like, is just stupid. It's just silly, right? Because there's just so many variables. There's so many little pieces of tribal knowledge that you're just not going to know about until you get there and scrape your knees yourself, right? So, I think you need to always keep your eye on the prize, but you need to also understand that that prize is like a moving target a little bit, and like, things are going to change. You've got to be adaptable. One thing that I was worried about when I started my business, right? Because I was actually a pretty shit employee, right? I'll just be straight up. And I think a large part of that was just like lack of engagement and like,
Hmm.
I got bored, whatever. I didn't have enough juice, from it, right? So one of the things I was worried about was like, am I gonna get bored, right? Am I gonna, get bored like I always used to when I had all these other jobs? Is the farthest thing from the truth, right? It's, at least for me, right? I am so dialed in every single day. I actually need to like my wife has to tell me to stop working, right? So like some of the things even that you think are going to be your obstacles might end up being your strengths, right? So being adaptable is super key. And yeah, man, I think you just gotta be mildly obsessed, right? Like you have to have like a little bit of obsession in there. I go to sleep thinking about this stuff. I wake up thinking about it, right? And you know, other than the times where I have to like push it out of my brain so I can enjoy time with my family, right? Like it is always on my waking mind, right? And I think my clients appreciate that, right? Because they
Sure.
can feel that and there's a different level of, understanding and like, I'm prepared, right? So honestly, I just think that it's important to make sure that your motivations are right and that you're adaptable and you're doing the right thing as much as you can and just figure it out. Commit to the long term. Everyone's gonna scrape their knees. If you don't scrape your knees, you're not gonna have the scar tissue that you need to find success, right? So that was a little bit of a winding answer, but
Oh,
like I
no.
said, there's a lot to unpack over the last 7 years.
Exactly, exactly. Call would be we would be on for a day,
I
multiple
know.
days, talking about
Easy.
stories and
Yeah.
absolutely. But no, you're so right. And if you and in studying any successful CEO, there has to be some level of obsession. There was for any CEO. It was constant. But that's what created something incredible. So
Mm.
it's so cool. Um, Speaking about, so we had ups and downs, and most have that, and that feels like the circle or backwards. It's just you can't even almost map it, just where how businesses run. But it's been running well. Like you've passed over the hurdle, you survived COVID, and in some ways, I know that helped business. In some ways, it hurt business. It was very unique. But as of now, 2025, what are some of the challenges you guys are focusing on right now?
Mm. What are some of the challenges that we're focusing on now? Well, look, there's so much changing today, right? Like, you know, even just 3 years ago, things were totally different, right? AI, not to be cliche, but it's really changing a lot of different aspects of, I think, everyone's business and our lives, right?
Hmm.
Think about like just something as simple as cold outbound, right? I gave you the kudos before for cold calling me. Like, not too many people are doing that. And, I think they're moving over to this situation where it's like, how can we automate everything and put AI into everything? And some of that's really good and valuable, but I think it's being misused or abused, right? Especially from a sales, angle, right? So I would say 4 or 5 years ago, we got pretty smart about automating things like email outreach, right? And I think we probably got there before most of the people in my business did. Um, you know, that was pretty cool for a little while. Then, the Zoom infos of the world did a really good job penetrating the market. And now everybody has just got these spam cannons under their desk that they just whip out every day, type out a nice sequence, and they're just mowing down
Yeah.
their entire target market. And it is abysmal, dude. It is so bad. The amount of emails, text messages, phone calls, usually robocalls, and just like all types of outreach that I get are so bad, right? So, I started looking at that and being like, I don't even want to do this anymore. Like, I'm doing more harm to my brand than good. The response rates are abysmal. It's not doing my prospective audience and my target audience any service or bringing any value to their life. So let's kind of refocus. So, one of the things we did was we kind of said like, okay, people are reaching out to me on LinkedIn. They like my content. They like the stuff that I put out there. It's relevant to them. It's bringing value to them. People tell me all the time, like even people that wouldn't be like customers or whatever, hey, really like that post. That was super interesting. Hey, let me ask you a question about this, whatever. That tells me I'm on the right track because I'm educating buyers, right? Or I'm educating just people in general. So worst case scenario, if they never buy from us, we are leaving a positive impression on them, right?
Huge.
So
The
anything about
network.
2025, like that, this is the way like people want to consume stuff. They want to buy stuff via getting educated, entertained, value add, always, always, always giving to the community. And it just comes around, right? So like I guess one of the challenges, because that was the question originally, is like, what are some of the big challenges? I would say for me, it's about growing that community, growing that audience. Because, if you're a slave to the LinkedIn algorithm for the rest of your life, you're in trouble. That thing changes like every other week. I'm like, what do you want from me? Video is huge, except, you're not distributing it, but anyway,
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, just trying to kind of like grow the machine to be able to add more value to more people at scale is a big kind of initiative for us. Other challenges I'm facing, dude, I don't have enough time in the day. I got two small kids and an amazing wife who I love so much. And every single time I come down here to work, I am extremely aware of the trade that I'm making, right? So, time is short.
And
Anybody
close
who's
but
got
far.
little kids, yeah, but anybody who's got little kids will tell you how short time is, right? Like how long ago was it that your kids were in diapers, man? It was like yesterday, right? So,
Exactly.
um, time is always short, so I'm just trying to be smart, and I'm not always smart. So sometimes I gotta just bang my head against the wall until it gets into my thick skull. But, doing things around delegation, having the right people around you, like these are all regular things that every business struggles with all the time. And just, it goes back to that obsession. Like you gotta always be obsessed with getting better, getting smarter, and finding better ways to do stuff. So. I don't know if that was anything you can grab onto, but
Extremely. Yes. And the value is there. You basically the premise is too, you don't cut corners. And in your business too, you don't cut corners as well. Because and especially in the world of automation and things that can handle a lot And at scale, scale doesn't always mean better just because something can make, 1,000 phone calls in one shot, in one day. It's the spam method. Yeah, like you were saying, the spray and pray. Business owners that are applying that to do that and taking out the human element is what's going to directly hinder their business.
Oh, for sure, dude. Let me tell you the deal with, this state of BD in 2025. The big problem is that volume is a crutch, okay? It's precision that's the weapon that you're looking for, right? And everyone thinks that if you just fire up these span cannons and just like 10x, 10x, 10x the activity, you'll get there. But it's diminishing rate of return, and you're just pissing people off, right? So how do you get, and this is why I always tell people, you need to build these systems with the customer in mind. You have to have empathy. What does your customer want? Where are they? Go meet them there and see if you can help. And what's not helping is the little clay enabled first line AI, personalized email
Right.
with like no signature, and I have no idea what your company you're from, and I see the M dashes in there. I'm just like, come on, guys, let's get better here, like find a way to actually add value and like things click, So yeah, I think the large majority of companies are still trying to get their footing around that. And a lot of times they call me to help them solve that problem. And it looks, kind of unique in each different scenario. But, there is somebody out there that can help you dial this stuff in. Um,
The
I
right
think,
way.
yeah, the cutting corners is where people get caught up and they end up just losing a lot of time, money, and energy.
Exactly right. That's exactly it. Man, we could talk a lot about this stuff for sure, and we'll definitely have to do a part two. But Graham, tell us how we get in touch with you. How do we get in touch with Emma Search?
So, our website is msearchco.com. You can check us out there. I'm just getting ready to spin up a newsletter, which I'm really pumped about. If you like AI and tech and the business side of that realm, the newsletter is for you. It's called the AI Market Memo. So look out for that. And then, the LinkedIn is really, kind of the front page of my business today, right? So it's Graham Locklear on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only one. If there's somebody else that is Graham Locklear on
Block
LinkedIn,
them.
tell me.
Just
I will
block them.
take them out immediately. Yeah.
It's awesome. Graham Locklear, thanks so much for being on, CEO of M Search. This is the Valuable Mind podcast. Graham, thanks for being on again. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, dude. Let's do it again.
Absolutely will. Have a good day, everybody.